You've seen nothing if you haven't seen this. Shia LaBeouf's conversion to Christianity in 2022 was great news for all the right reasons. We watched him go from a young, sweet actor starring in all these blockbuster movies of the late 2000s to a deeply troubled man, always getting into scandals, controversies, and arrests. An inside story of what truly went down in his life of this phenomenal actor is something we've been starved of for a really long time. Well, today's that moment of truth. Before we get down to it, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification button for more videos like this.
I felt like I was living a life that was meaningless. And so I drank a lot and smoked a lot of weed, very lascivious with women, and was trying to like fill a hole, just constantly chasing instincts, just like an animal, and thought I was in control of things. And I was in an industry that would applaud that. And so I would come to set and I would freak out in front of a camera, ooh, and people would clap. And then I'd go home and I'd be a crazy person. And I hurt people, was a big sinner in my life. And grew up believing that that was the way. And then all of the things that I used to use to fill my that emptiness up stopped working. And then I didn't want to be alive anymore. So in the States we have something called Zoom. I don't know if you have it. And I had a producer. I had gotten arrested in Georgia for fighting with a policeman.
The producer was arrested?
No, I was arrested making a movie in Georgia for fighting with a policeman. And on that movie was a producer who was in a spiritual program that helps people who have a problem with alcohol. And he told me to go on this meeting. So I go on this meeting and I see 50 men smiling and laughing. And that's my first sign of God, is laughter.
I've always thought there was a connection between the weight of Shia's fame and the amount of trouble he got into. And it's just refreshing to see him talk about that. I don't know about you, but I think there's a reason we began to see the more controversial parts of Shia the more famous he got. And though this is his personal experience, it kind of points to a dangerous blueprint among Hollywood's rich and famous. Hollywood may give you fame and money, but it doesn't tell you how to use it. And when you're desperately trying to fill a void inside you, like we've all come to do at some point in our lives, uncontrolled fame and money turns out to be a recipe for disaster that you'd least expect. Did you notice the point where he said his first sign of God was laughter? That moment struck a chord with me. I mean, you're looking at a young man completely worn out by his present circumstances, coming into contact with something he never thought he could achieve, and that among Christians. It reminds me of Psalms 16:11, which says, "In thy presence there is fulfillment of joy. In thy right hand are pleasures forevermore." This recognition turned out to be the first step of many for Shia LaBeouf, opening up a whole new consciousness about his state at the time and what he had to do.
How would you describe yourself now, the new Shia LaBeouf?
I'm very loved by God. I know that. And I want to love God better. And so I'm trying to live a more righteous life. There's things I need to change, and I'm working on it. And I feel like now my life has purpose. I used to manipulate a lot, and I used to lie a lot, and I don't want to do that. And so I get scared sometimes to be emotional. The things that kept me from the faith would be things that my logic couldn't reason around. Jonah in the whale. Stories like that are a different genre of the Bible, I would use to pick apart the whole Bible. I would discount the beauty of the forest because of the ugliness of some of its trees. And then pain makes you willing to stop arguing because joy feels good. And so through Pio, I'm able to look at the Gospels from a different perspective, less as an antagonist who's trying to pick the thing apart, and more of a believer. And now that I have felt, faith comes when you know. Faith and belief are different words. Belief is when you're willing to know. Faith is when you really know. I have no right to laugh and smile and joke like I do. My life on paper doesn't make sense that I laugh like I do. That's only because of God. When I go to church, I feel lighter.
I love the fact that Shia takes responsibility for his wrongdoings. You know, for the kind of man he used to be. He did these things after all. And coming up and saying, "Oh, the devil made me do it," would have been such a lame excuse. Don't get me wrong, the devil tempts all right, but when we sin, it's because we've given into the temptation. 2 Corinthians 12:9 tells us about the benefit of what Shia does here. It says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." In acknowledging his weaknesses, Shia also gets to realize that he's loved by God and that he needs to play his part in getting to love and know God better. Most people who come to God think of all their old habits would just suddenly vanish as if it never happened. But that's not what happens. We still need to partner with God to utilize the grace he supplies as we make conscious efforts to be better. One other talking point I couldn't ignore was when Shia talked about how he used to cancel out the Bible because of the stories that didn't appeal to his logic. Well, I'm grateful that he was able to scale that hurdle. It also gave me some insight into Hollywood's culture of resistance against the Bible. If Shia could feel that way, there's no reason why other actors and actresses can't, right? However, like Shia discovers, the key to understanding the Bible is locked in belief and faith. Sadly, it's a lot more difficult to gain belief and faith without handing your life over to God. And for Shia, his turning point came when he accepted the role of Padre Pio in the movie of the same name.
Shia, everyone knows that you went through spiritual growth with this, like a total transformation. So, where were you at in your faith when you filmed the movie?
At the point of us filming, I had already been with Alex and the brothers in San Lorenzo for probably 4 months. And then when we shipped out, we just moved into a Benedictine monastery. So then you're with them every day. It's even more cloistered. It's even more prayerful. And when you're in that situation, when you got an all access pass to Catholicism, it's very hard not to get wrapped up in the goings on. And I felt an enormous peace. You know, usually when you film a movie, it's completely neurotic. I didn't have that. I didn't. I didn't have the same kind of neurosis and fear that pervades my system when I'm filming a movie normally. I felt an enormous peace and an invite to do good work. It was always easy. It was unbelievably easy. Even the hard stuff just felt easy.
For those of you who are wondering how a movie role could change a bad boy like Shia LaBeouf, well, there's your answer. Playing that role was probably not the first time Shia's heard about God. Like he pointed out in the last clip, he'd heard about God and the Bible all right, but he was always on the attacking side, which is kind of the Hollywood side. However, the illusions of the prince of this world tend to break when we grow tired of the charade and just want a way out. Everybody who's ever brought themselves genuinely to God will tell you one thing. They came to him broken, and they found peace. It's a constant. How else can you explain Shia finding unexplainable peace on a movie set? I mean, it's all make-believe, right? One of the outstanding characteristics of actors is their ability to get into character and out of it when they're done, because at the end of the day, it's all a job. Shia LaBeouf took up this role as one, but found something much more on the set. This is what Jesus was talking about when he said, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest," in Matthew 11:28. What you're about to see next is Shia, who did exactly what Jesus asked in this portion of the Bible, and he got his rest.
And then you get further into the gospel and you start getting into like elements of this like redemptive. It felt like I started reading about a route. I started like reading a map, like towards something that felt like let go. That's really what I got out of the Gospels. If I could wrap it up in 2 words, it was let go. And at that time when I was reading it, I was holding on so tight to a life that I was slipping away through my hands, to 35 years of management, that the gospel gave me this, this invite to just let go. What never was appealing to me about Buddhism was this idea, like, if I'm in a boat and the boat is sinking and I don't know how to swim, Buddhism is a book that tells you, and read this and learn how to swim better. And at the time in my life, like, I didn't want to swim anymore. I had a gun on the table. I was out of here. I didn't want to be alive anymore when all of this happened, okay? Shame like I had never experienced before. Kind of shame, you forget how to breathe. You don't know where to go. You can't go outside to get like a taco. Like, you don't want to go anywhere.
And that's where you are when you're up there reading the gospel and thinking about the plain tide repeal. You're in that state.
Yes, but I'm also in this like, this deep desire to like hold on.
Yeah.
And so I read the gospel with this man, Jude, and I keep hearing like in many different variations of it. I'm not gonna explain the whole gospel here, nor do I need to, it's you. But I keep hearing let go. And to a person who's been gripping so tight for so long, it feels like, it just feels like, it just feels like the right move to let go, like complete surrender for real. And it stops being this like prep of a movie, and it starts being something that feels beyond all that.
Hearing this testimony from Shia is beyond refreshing. It also raises questions. It'd be wrong of us to think that Shia is the only person in Hollywood who's been through a rough patch. For some, every day is the same gray and lifeless experience. So what's really got me in a bind now is this. Why is it so hard for those who are having it rough to turn to God? What is it about Christianity that turns them away? Why are they willing to try everything else but the truth? It really bothers me, and I'd love to know what you have to say down in the comments section. If you found this video interesting, you'd be doing someone a favor by sharing it with them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.